And we're live, Larry. Here we are. Welcome
Hello,
back.
hello, 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 hello. That's my
Yeah,
my patented hello.
right. Yeah. Yeah. Welcome back for another Astros Weekly recap. Obviously, last week was the 11th. Today's the 18th. I'm here with Larry, the GM. I'm Clint, the scout. And I think we have some fun stuff to talk about today. And I think the biggest thing that, I just want to just take 1 second to do a victory lap on the whole Forrest Whitley coming up and pitching for the Astros. Even though it was short lived, it was worthwhile. Um, I was impressed, 98, 99 on the gun. So I just wanted to take that victory lap for us, Larry. I hope you enjoyed seeing it as much as I did.
Yeah, so we said he would be on the 12th. He came later. He's already gone, but I think he'll be back. Um, and he's probably one of those that'll be going up and down quite a bit this year, depending he's probably going to be one of the swing guys with Muchinski and Martinez eventually. When the staff gets full, those all three of those guys probably become the first guys coming to running the Sugar Land Express back and forth. So it'll be interesting.
So
And
I
I
mean,
thought he pitched pretty well, although I think I think he kind of
I
stayed
think
in today.
adrenaline. I think he just emotionally
Yeah.
was in the thick of it from that standpoint, and it kind of showed. But I think I saw 98, 99 miles per hour out of him. So I think that just alludes to that first round talent that he was when the Astros drafted him, and we'll see if they decide to bring him back up. I think it might be a viable thing for them to do. His arm is pretty lively, if they manage it correctly. So it should be exciting. But I think the Astros have some exciting news coming up with Verlander getting to start Friday, and we've heard good news from Fromber. So I guess that's just going to go ahead and lead us right into our first topic, right, Larry? And that is, well, I
What?
guess first thing is what's wrong with the Astros. So just as a little bit of a shout out to my brother who continues to tell me that we should stop saying it's too early and don't panic. So I just want to let him know we're acknowledging that you want some actual uh, feedback and some data and a really good explanation. And I think Larry and I are about to dive into it and get you plenty of that today. But I figured I'd put him on the spot. And so, Larry, this is your chance to call him out as well. So feel free to do so.
So Jason, it's early, and don't panic. And we'll show you why not to panic before we're done with today. Clint, just so you know, I'm not seeing any chat messages, nor would where they would show up. So I don't know if there's a
Okay.
way
I,
my
I'm
screen's
tracking them as well. I haven't seen any.
okay.
I see we have
I
some
don't even
viewers on. So,
I don't even see where we would see them. So I don't know if
okay.
my StreamYard is set up wrong or whatever. But I'm
Okay.
I just want to let you know I will be no help with you with the chat. So
No, it's okay. I will keep a track on all that. I
all
see
right,
we've got some viewers in watching. I've got the comment section, the feeds ready. So whenever they drop them in, I will get them. There might be a
all
slight
right,
delay, guys. So if we don't get to it right away, just give us a chance to turn around and answer those questions for you if we have them. So now that we've told them it's too early and don't panic, let's move into the actual first topic of it, and that is let's just talk about the fact how many injuries this Astros pitching staff is kind of going into. And I just wanted to highlight some of the updates from ESPN about where certain guys stand with Verlander obviously taking the mound on Friday. We got good news about Valdez. I'll just skip down to him since his is going to be a little bit more is obviously going to be sooner than later, but it looks like he might be returning during the road trip upcoming. That was something Joe Espada said earlier this week. And then we've seen McCullers throwing off the slope, Urquidy's throwing off the slope, Garcia's throwing a bullpen session, which I think that is incredibly interesting. But we're talking about, I believe he had a May 13th surgery date for Tommy John last year. So he's probably on track to be recovered fully and, a year afterwards. And so um, I guess you could say reinforcements are coming, so to speak.
right.
So it's just not the ideal start that fans wanted. Um, before I move on, Larry, is anything you want to add on that? Or
No, so I think so. Order wise, Clint, we think Verlander's one, obviously. Then we think Fromber's two back, and then Garcia.
I think Garcia's back before Urquidy.
And then your Urquidy be 4, and then McCullers will be 5 sometime after the All-Star break, probably.
Yes. So if I had to put a guess on it, obviously we know Verlander's tomorrow. Fromber's probably the 23rd, I would think. I think it all depends on when that 15-day IL completion
Okay.
starts. I don't remember when he went on, but I think Garcia would be targeting what, May 1st,
Yeah, something like that.
give or take. I think
Mid,
Urquidy would be a
early to
June
mid-May.
1st type. Yeah.
Okay.
And then McCullers right after the All-Star break makes a lot of sense. So
Yeah, because I had
optimism.
McCullers baked in for August 1st, so anything before that is all gravy for me. So yeah.
Hey, yeah, we definitely know we'll need him at some point. So I'm hoping we're
So
gonna.
yeah, so the point of all
Yeah.
this, guys, is when these guys get back, guys that what's going to be interesting is how do you manage the pitching staff at that point? Um, and and it may not be as it's cut and dried as we all think it is. So I think it'll be interesting, like who goes to the bullpen. Well, part of that's going to be dependent on how they're pitching today. I mean, if somebody told you today Ronel Blanco should go to the bullpen, I'm ready to fight them. Like no, and we'll show you why before we're done
No.
today. Ronel Blanco shouldn't be going to the bullpen anytime soon, and we got to figure out if in his year 30 year is as the light come on and then it's shining bright. So
Yeah.
we're
Is he
gonna
a late
figure out.
bloomer?
Yeah, we're gonna figure out who goes to the bullpen, and it may be really JP's probably one that goes to the bullpen first, and then
So Larry,
or
what you're
Hunter
saying
Brown.
is we've already got content to start recording and talking about.
Yeah, that's not even in our plan today. But the point is, when
No.
these guys get back, some of the guys we have in the starting roles are going to be put in the bullpen, and guys that we've had on the bullpen are going to be pulled to the AAA. And Forrest is probably going to be the first one to go back, and then you got probably Seth Martinez and Parker Muchinski that are going to run the train back and forth because, quite honestly, Seth Martinez, and Sean Dubin and Parker. Well, I guess Parker's Majinski's there right now, right? Seth Martinez and Sean Dubin and
So
Forrest Whitley are the only three that can. Well, you're not going to option Brian Ray. So those three are the only three that can be optioned. So
and I'm pretty sure I think they already optioned Whitley back to AAA
okay,
for the impending move to bring Verlander back on Friday. So
okay,
they've kind of they
they
showed their
already
hand with
announced
that,
that.
but
Okay,
it makes sense. He has the options and they can work with that. So
right. So
but like I said, yeah, we
let's talk
just
about the impact of pitching injuries because I know. So a lot of time last year, people were blaming the pitching, blaming the injuries for the Astros, you know, sub performance to what they thought Astros fans thought they should be, and I think they were really a lot of it was thinking about Alvarez and Altuve, who were out for quite a bit of time, and those are two significant at bats. I will tell you, Clint, if you want to go to the next slide, the injuries impact of these pitching injuries is monumental. All right. So what I have in this chart, I have the pitching injuries in baseball sorted by the number of pitchers that are currently on the IL for these teams. The Astros have the 5 starting pitchers that Clint showed you the status of, and they have four relief pitchers on the IL. That Kendall Graveman, who's not coming back this year, Penn Murphy, who this team signed to be part of their bullpen, and Oliver Ortega, who they signed in the offseason with the intention that he was going to be part of the bullpen, and Bennett Souza, who did a really good job late last year, that the team, as a lefty, that this team really would love to have as part of their bullpen, as one of the lefties besides Josh Hader in it. And so, given that, we've got 9 pitchers currently on the injured list. Now, this data, I believe, is 2 days old. I just want to pull the data together. The Dodgers have had 6 starting pitchers and they had 3 in the bullpen. The Dodgers and the Astros are the 2 most impacted team by pitching injuries. And you can see your favorite other major league team. Notice that Atlanta Braves and Toronto Blue Jays are down there with almost no injuries in their pitching rotation as before the series started with the Braves. So you can see where these teams are, and you'll notice that the column on the right. So the column in the middle where it says percent, that's essentially what the winning percentage of each of these teams was when I did the data. I guess it was 2 days ago. Then the column next to that, it was the Las Vegas over under win percentage of the team. So, I think the Astros were, I don't, 89.5. I don't know if that's what it was, but translate 89.5 into 162 games. That's what the percentage there is. And the difference is how far above or below the Las Vegas over under FanDuel over under winning percentage the teams are. And you'll notice the teams in dark blue are the teams that are failing the most relative to where their projections were. I mean, you can see the White Sox down there failing terribly, and they were expected to be terrible. So I'm not sure it's all that relevant. Okay, now I've just lost. Okay, there you go. So
It just blinked out, Larry. Sorry, I'm
okay,
not sure what.
okay, like whoa.
Yeah,
So you see, what I really want you guys to notice is you'll notice that every one of the teams at the top of this chart that has a ton of pitching injuries, all the teams of 7 through 9 pitching, that have more than 7 or more pitchers injured, are failing to meet the expectations that Las Vegas had set for them. Now the Dodgers guys, they have a gigantic payroll, and they actually knew a lot of these pitchers were injured coming into the season, and you know, Clayton Kershaw, they knew was going to be injured, so they somewhat built their team around coming into the season with a lot of injuries. The Astros just sustained some injuries in spring training, and well, it's too late to really do much. And they already we're entering the payroll Armageddon period. They really don't have a lot of flexibility. Dana Brown's been trying to tell you that relative to the payroll, and then they went and spent $19 million on Josh Hader. So it's a little bit of like we're reaping a little bit of what we sowed, but we the amount of pitching injuries the Astros had is unsustainably high. It's incredibly bad luck, and it's having a huge impact. And so this is one of the reasons the Astros are failing is the pitching injuries. But all the teams with 7 or more are failing expectations. So, it's not just the Astros, but all those teams were failing. Does that make sense, Clint?
and it does, and I think everybody just needs to highlight like anything in orange and is teams that we've played, and then you look at that, it's a point, it's 0.255 as far as the differential from actual win percentage to the Vegas over under projections, and there's only two other teams that are matching that, and the argument could be made Miami and Chicago or the White Sox are obviously not going to be at the top end of Major League Baseball, so it kind of
Well,
puts into perspective
and for Miami, it has a lot to do with the
not
the
having
best.
Alcantara, not
Yeah,
having
the best
um,
starting pitcher. Maybe you can could argue one of the best starting pitchers in
yeah,
major leagues, right? So
yeah. So it's just bear in mind it does have an impact, and we're seeing it, and it also hasn't been easy with the competition that they've faced in this first few weeks.
let's go to the
So
next topic. With the next table, it's going to be very similar data. It's the same data, but it's sorted differently. Okay, now I've taken out the pitcher injuries from that. We're still going to look at those last 3 columns, but we're going to sort on the Las Vegas odds. And this is something you've heard me say multiple times. And actually, we talked about this. I think we talked about this a little bit last week, Clint. But I wanted to put the gauntlet. I wrote an article called "The Gauntlet" for the first 20 games. The good news is, guys, we finished the gauntlet today. But I called it the Gauntlet because when you sort by the Las Vegas odds, and you highlight the teams in orange on here, those are the teams the Astros have faced this season. So the Astros faced the team that Las Vegas said would have the second best record. The team Las Vegas said would have the third best record, the Yankees. The team that the Las Vegas said would have the fifth best record, the Rangers. And the team that they said would have the eighth best record, Texas tied for fifth. Sorry, I want to be completely accurate. And Toronto, the
mm,
eighth best team.
yep.
So 4 of the top 8 teams That accounts for 17 of the 20 games. That's who the Astros have faced in the time period where they've had as bad as injuries as any team in baseball, more than any other team, more than any team in baseball except the Dodgers, and they're the same as the Dodgers. Guys, you want to understand why the Astros have not met expectations coming out of the box. You put those two things together, and it was the gauntlet. It was a disastrous gauntlet for the Astros. And so, what the table on the right is showing is that 85% I just quoted you is the 85% of the top 10 teams the Astros faced. 85% of the games were against top 10 teams. Starting tomorrow, they're going to be at like 30 or 31%. I've tweeted this, whatever that number is. I think it's 30. It's 30% for the next 20 games. There's some good teams the Astros are about to play in the next 20 games, but there's a lot of bad teams, and we're starting with the Washington Nationals, who their winning percentage on this chart I think has gone down even from where they are now. The remaining games after those first 40 games, the Astros will have played almost as many games against top 10 Las Vegas rated teams as they will have for the next 122 games. I think it's
Mhm.
like, help me out, Clint. It's 24 and 29. They played 49 total. They've had 20, and
49 total.
I'm sorry. They will hit like 23, and then they have 26 left after that.
Yep.
So, guys, they've so they have 17 in the first 20. They have 6 in the next 20, and then they have that was 17 and 6, 23, and then they have 26 after that, and then final 122 games, 21% of their opponents. Guys, when I have said the Astros are about to get really good, it's not only that the pitching is going to come back, it's that the schedule. We've been playing we've been playing the SEC schedule, and we're about to go play the Conference USA schedule.
Yeah.
That's what it amounts to. Does that make
And
sense?
it does, and then you also factor in, you've had 1 day off in that span.
Right.
Um, and so part of me just alludes to ability to recover, ability to coach in and implement adjustments kind of on the fly. It it's not going to be very easy, and when you're facing really solid offensive teams like you've seen, it it makes it a challenge for any of these guys to really step up there and implement what they want to change, improve on it, and get better while in the midst of recovering, understanding the lack of depth behind you and kind of,
Right.
wearing or carrying that load for this team right now. So I think we both predicted at the beginning of the season they were going to be a better second half team than a first half team. The schedule's aligning that way, but also just the health in general is making a huge, having a huge impact on the Astros so far.
So I think I said in a Twitter space like 2 weeks ago that if the Astros ended up the first section of games like 18 and 8, I'm sorry, 8 and 14, it wouldn't surprise me. Guys, I know they're 6 and 14, but the, if somebody tells you like what the hell's wrong with the Astros, like nobody saw this coming, that's not true. And I have plenty of people that were in the Twitter space with me that night when I told them, like, guys, just so we're prepared, the Astros could start out really bad because of the pitching situation, because of the schedule. And so, yeah, it's bad. It's really bad. But in the next 142 games, it's going to get a lot easier. That's just the way it is.
I agree. And so there's always reasons to look up and be happy and optimistic for this team.
Right.
So that'll just lead us into a little bit more detail on that gauntlet.
So
I guess should have moved to this a little
there's the percent.
sooner.
Yeah, there's the
Yeah,
percentages. So that this is the data behind those numbers, and there you go. We can move on, Clint.
So that leads us into something that we're kind of carrying over from last week, but that's talking about where the Astros' offensive luck and their impact with runners in scoring position sits right now, and kind of what the change has been week over week. So, bullet points to really take into consideration are Astros are number 2 in WRC plus overall at 126. Last week they were 118, so the offense got better.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then with runners in scoring position, they're at 16th with a WRC plus of 104. Last week was 83. OPS at 690. So
Right. So
Larry
that
motivated
tells you
them a little bit.
they're, they're not great yet, right?
No.
But what we told people is like, look, the issue with runners in scoring position is largely a luck issue, and it's a sample size issue. Alex Bregman didn't forget how to hit with runners in scoring position. These hitters that are great hitters that are leading to the 126. And we showed graph after graph last week. Go look at the article in the LGM, and for last week's show, I showed you the graphs. Those graphs are getting better because we try. What Clint and I wanted to do
Mhm.
today is to keep it very simple. Okay, and we'll probably continue to update this as the runners and scoring position number comes up. Now, for their just full disclosure, Yonder Diaz has like for the whole time he's been a major leaguer, he has not done all that great with runners in scoring position. I don't know why. Okay, maybe it's just this style of batting. I don't know why. Okay, but other players on this team that are terrible runners scoring position, like Jose Altuve was one of the worst gaps that we had last week when we talked about these numbers, and that's gonna get better. There's no reason to think Jose Altuve can't hit with runners in scoring position when he's having one of the greatest years he's had in his career. So, guys, this number will get better, but this is part of like why the Astros bad. Well, so we really covered the pitching side, right? It's been pitching, opponents. Now we're going to cover the batting side, and we're going to cover this, and then we're going to cover another topic related to the bats. It's been a real drag, but
Mhm.
the real issue, really the only issue with this offense, that's number 2 in baseball. Like guys, get it in your heads. The offense is the second best offense in baseball. Is that they haven't hit great with runners in scoring position yet. And you look at runners in scoring position stats, like the Rangers are just phenomenal, like a 170 last time I looked with runners in scoring position. It's crazy. So to me, that's really a sample size issue, and it'll normalize and it'll get better. That's what I'll say about that.
Oh yeah. I don't think there's any way that this offense gets held down in this type of in this way for a while. So I would expect that it just gets better, and we'll see better days, especially offensively, and guys like Bregman and stuff will start to obviously get
Well,
better. It's
let me
just
say
been a
this.
weird.
Yeah, sorry, Clint. Let me say this too. Like, just so you guys know, and those charts we looked at last week, runners and scoring position stats actually normally get better. Like the normal a normal major league team hits better with runners and scoring position. Well, that has to do with like the pitchers pitching out of the stretch, the 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 advantages to the offense. You can score runs with sacrifice flies, and all these different things are going to happen. That the it's just a weird anomaly for this team, and I don't think it's going to sustain. But part of the reason it's problematic, Clint, is the next slide the Abreu slide, or are we going to something else?
No, we'll get to him in a little bit. Next
Okay,
slide is going to be more of a callback to
the pitching.
pitching.
Okay,
So we'll
well, let's talk
we'll get
about.
into that.
So yeah, so let's go back to the pitching and let's deep dive to some really weird things that have been happening with the Astros pitching staff. And what Clint and I have done, and we didn't really we want to go interactive with you in Excel, and this is
Yep.
so this is be better than we could do this in an article, right? So this will be some really cool stuff that um Clint, we'll just do this, and then let's try to clip a little like conclusion at the end of it.
Yes.
Um, what Clint's going to do is we're going to go through the pitchers one by one. We'll start with the starters, and you're going to see like how are they doing compared to last year, and you're going to hear Clint and I talk about the woe. Like, I, if you're if you're a subscriber to the Larry the GM website, Clint, let me go ahead and cutting myself right there. All right.
Yeah.
If you're with us and you're watching this video and you have not liked the video, please like the video. Please subscribe to our YouTube channels, both of our YouTube channels. Please, please come to the Larry the GM website, get a paid membership, whether that be the premium membership or the Moneymaker membership. Um, and you will get benefits from those. You'll get the premium members get a series preview each series, and the money makers get a daily prediction of who's going to do well that night for both teams.
Yep.
If if you haven't done those things, please do so. And if you don't want to do it on the website, you can do it on Patreon. And if you just want to throw money at old Larry the Gym so we can do more to publicize the channel and have some fun giveaways and such, then there's a link on there for PayPal as well. You can bless it that way. But one of the things I'll say about when you spend time on the Larry the GM site, you'll hear me talk about XWOBA a lot. And you're probably gonna be by the time we're done with this next section, you're going to understand why Clint and I focus so much on XWOBA. So let me talk about the differences between WOBA and XWOBA before we get too deep into this, Clint, because that way we won't have to
Mhm.
keep resetting it along the way. So XWOBA is a stat that comes out that is somewhat analogous to on base percentage and OPS. I'm oversimplifying it, but the scale of XWOBA is essentially an all of WOBA is an all-in statistic that considers both your ability to get on base and power, and it's the combination of those two. Without getting into the mass detail of the stats, because quite frankly, Larry the GM doesn't know them right off the bat, and you wouldn't want me hear me rattle them if I was reading them out. Okay, now what XWOBA does is it is a it's an algorithm that projects what the WOBA statistic would be, taking into account the quality of the contact of the ball hitting the bat or the pitcher missing the bat. It's a it's a prediction of the launch angle, the exit velocity, and some other factors by speed. I think speed of the runners in there, and all those things come together, and it calculates an XWOBA. So the main thing to remember about these two stats is WOBA, just an overall offensive. We should probably clip this, Clint. As a
Yeah.
WOBA is an overall projected quality statistic, like a combination of on base percentage and OPS. And XWOBA is a algorithm which takes into account the quality of the contact to predict a WOBA. Okay, so given all that, what Clint has done for us here is he's collected through the magic of Excel pivot tables that all accounting type people are amazing at. Clint has given you pivot tables for each one of the pitchers, and what we're going to focus on is the the pitch usage early, because there's some fascinating moves the Astros are doing with their pitch usage that Clint's written about once, and probably Clint, we may need cut and paste these tables and put them in there, but
Yeah, one of the goals was to continue to update it, but I was like, I could do it weekly,
yeah,
and then like we'll collect more data, but we talk about it, and then
yeah.
we'll
Well,
revisit this data.
maybe
We'll
what we'll
write
do is
more about it, and
yeah, we'll link it. We'll link that article to this video, right? Say, okay,
yes,
Clint's updated this. skip ahead, whatever, 12 minutes, whatever we are. How far are we into the video? Whatever.
We're actually 30 minutes in, Larry.
Okay, it doesn't even feel like 30 minutes. Here we go. So
No.
what we're going to do, guys, is we're going to go through. We're going to look at the pitch usage, and then we're going to look at the WOBA stats and the xWOBA stats. And remember, these numbers average is 319. So for pitchers, we want to be below 319. All right. So Clint, I did a intro to all that, right? I think that's going to help us as we go through these stats. All right. So do you want to take the lead on Javier? Like, what do you see when we look at the Javier stats?
Well, I think it kind of tapped into what I first talked about when I wrote the article.
Yes.
It's just where's the approach and the philosophy been for the pitching staff this year? Um, I I have some other stuff I want to mention. It's not separate from pitching, obviously, but it's kind of about it. But I think we've all kind of noticed strike zone percentage. I mean, strikeout percentage, whiff rate is down um, for this team overall. And I think that just kind of alludes to why they've changed I guess changed the direction of how some of these guys are pitching. And I think obviously we've seen really good starts out of Javier so far, and it really just comes into them trying to understand we're not power pitchers. We're going to be a little bit more artistic about this. We're going to be more calculated and put ourselves in a position to reduce the effectiveness of hitters without compromising compromising our pitchers potentially from a physical standpoint, but also in a standpoint of throwing up more, I guess more readily available pitches to be hit. So one thing I see with Javier right off the bat is he's thrown that changeup so much more this year.
Mm-hmm.
But not only that, he's thrown it. I guess it's been unlucky because WOBA sitting at 354 with an expected WOBA at 208, but it really just I think it highlights that number one, Javier has recognized another facet for how he's going to improve and get better as a pitcher. And that changeup has drastically changed the effectiveness of some of his other pitches. I mean,
Correct.
the xWOBA data, obviously, when you look at 2024 for the four seam, for the knuckle curve and stuff like that, are not obviously not improving or really drastically changing based off of that. But I think what it really does is it really helps the slider when you see that xWOBA at when you see the WOBA at 180 and still an expected WOBA well below average as well.
Right.
I think it just creates it. Like I said, hitters are not going up there looking fastball slider. They really have to look changeup, and so he's really offset that well. And whenever you start throwing your changeup about the same percentage as you start throwing the slider, hitters are looking for it, and hitters are not expecting that pitch to come in, work away from them or break into them if they're left-handers. They're, that changeup is working down and in on righties, down and away on lefties. So he's changing a little bit of eye level. He's changing the perception, the break point, all those different things with that. And then he can kind of layer in the fastball on top of it and catch guys off guard. So we're going to slow down the pace. We're going to try to get him to sleep a little out in front, and then I'm going to mash him with that 92, 93 mile an hour fastball, which we know people say plays a little heavier. And when I mean heavier is it plays a little faster, but it really just gets into this whole idea of I'm going to throw different pitches to make the other pitches more effective. And we're going to kind of see that trend with one other pitcher in a little while. But, that's kind of my gist of it, Larry. And I'm obviously I'm not always as data driven as you. So hopefully I summed that up pretty well.
No,
But
you did really good. I mean, one of the things to really dig in as we look at these numbers, you guys, these numbers are really early for some of these things.
Yeah.
So just as far as we're concerned, just throw out the knuckle curve data. It's not enough of a sample size to really dig into, right? And plus, it might not even been, given it was only 7.5% of his pitches last year. That's probably not even a significant sample size to base too much off of. But this is also why I use xWOBA data when I build my moneymaker tables, because they're more with a smaller sample size. You're basing it off the quality of the contact, right, versus the actual results of the contact. So one of the things, as good as Javier's been, you can really make an argument that the xWOBA data is telling you, hey, that changeup is way better than it's actually played out, and the four seam fastball is better than it's actually played out. And yeah, the slider's not as good, but if you have two pitches of 208 and 236 and then the 346, I'd much rather have that than the 354, 384, and 180, right? So I got two pitches that are premium pitches out of Christian Javier over the horizon. So I'm really excited to where this change of allocation of Javier's pitching goes. So that's Christian Javier. Should we go to Framber Valdez?
Yes. And so, obviously, with Fromber, we're going to be a little bit limited since he went on the IL, so we won't have as many pitches
Yeah.
to look at. Um, I think it's fascinating because we've seen some really good pitching out of Fromber in the past, but I mean, it. I'm always a little. I always look at the sinkers a little different because that's a really pitch to contact type pitch. You're really trying to drive home ground balls and do all that. So I'm always like, it's high, but it should, to me, it should play a little high just because you're trying to get that contact and you're trying to get those hitters to put that ball in play so your defense can work. And obviously you can take the cutter and the slider out of this. The sample sizes are really small, but I like to make sure that all the pitches and all the data are there. But you can kind of see as well, guys, when you look at that column D, when we're looking at this average WOBA for these pitches, um, you're looking at pitches like the changeup, the curveball that have performed worse than what is expected moving forward, and that's why xWOBA data is so valuable for Larry and I. Is just understanding that sometimes what you see is not all is not going to be the most common trend moving forward. So it's really important to understand that pitchers should get better, and the data is showing that they will get better. And I think a lot of that plays into, obviously they played some really good baseball teams,
That's the other, yeah.
and they played really good baseball teams, and then they're
Really good
also,
hitting baseball teams too.
yes, really,
The
yeah,
range, the
really,
Ranger, the Royals are actually a pretty good hitting team. The
yeah,
the Yankees are a great hitting team. The Rangers are a very good hitting. Yeah, the Rangers are a great hitting team. There's really their pitching that was the question mark. The Atlanta Braves were like a historically great hitting team last year and number
mhm,
one hitting team this year. And then the Royals are their strength is probably their hitting too. So well, I don't know. The Royals have like a 2017 feel about it, so Astros feel about it. So
yeah,
I am not going to diss the Royals in any way. I think there's surprises all around for them. But what's interesting about Fromber's like this data here, the changeup data is basically telling you in 23 the changeup wasn't as good as it appeared to be, and it's not as bad as it appears to be now. But they're both worse than they were last year. But he's throwing more of them. So it's interesting how and I'm really worried about the sample size with Fromber here. What the curveball is telling you is what again? It was better than what it really should have been. It's about what it was last year, but it hasn't been as good as it should have been. It's
yeah.
been the results have been worse than what he's deserved. Then the sinker's telling you it was better than it should have been last year, which is a little scary when we think of Fromber's year last year. Basically, the three biggest pitches, every single one of those, I just tell you, the xWOBA data is telling you that his WOBA was significantly better than his xWOBA, which means it should not have been the results should not have been as good as they were. And basically, the sinker is the same pitch as it was last year, and it's like what's going to be interesting is like when Frommer gets back, do they put him in the jungle of pitching more changeups? What's going to happen with Fromber? It's going to be a fascinating thing because this state is a little worrisome related to Fromber, quite
And a
frankly.
lot of that as well, I look at it as like, if he's dealing with that discomfort and that injury, so it would make sense curveball's not effective. It would make sure that there makes sense that some of these things are compromised compared to others. But, I've always thought lefties with a nice changeup to match that sinker and kind of fit the same profile, but obviously different velocities, a little bit of a sharp, a little bit of a slower downward move it compared to that sinker that's hard and diving. There's a difference between. So basically, I guess the way I would say it is a changeup's belly flopping while a sinker is diving down and across the zone. So that's kind of my thing. But you're right, the data's concerning. The injury is also not. I mean, it sounds like it's not concerning, but he's definitely gonna be somebody we keep an eye on these next few weeks, and obviously throughout the season, because it's going to be interesting because we've seen some Cy Young level pitching out of Fromber at times, but we've also seen the turmoil of him just not being able to locate those pitches, and that's no discredit to him because he is. I've always been amazed by how much movement and how well he gets the ball to work through and across the zone, and that curveball's always been his. It's his calling card. It's his showcase pitch that really gets hitters off balance. So
Yeah, so let's
and then we can all.
let's
Sorry,
go
go ahead, Larry.
let's go to Hunter Brown because we're
Yep.
getting long on these, Clem. We should probably push through a little
Yeah.
faster. So Hunter Brown statistics here, guys. It's problematic. Just going to be honest with you. Like I think when Clint and I
Yeah.
look at these numbers, like it's almost like the same pitcher isn't pitching. So here's the good news. If you look at the statistics through most of the first four, and probably Sliders not even real as far as sample size for either one of those years. So let's focus on the first three: cutter, four seam, and curve and knuckle curve. The results are worse than they should be by the quality of the contact. He's been victimized by
Hmm.
bad luck. That's what that would tell you. But the problem is, like, the X Wobas are terrible too. Like, the X Woba's worse for cutters, worse for four seams, and the knuckle curve is just like
Yeah.
here. And this is going to be a theme when we get to a couple of the relievers, guys. Something's wrong with that knuckle curve. For them to have for batters to have an X Woba of 502 again this year with a pitch that with the X Woba was 290 last year, better than average. Hunter Brown has a good knuckle curve, and it's being victimized this year. The splitter and the 23 data at 5% is probably real. I mean, the starting pitcher's thrown a lot of pitches last year. That splitter was
Hmm.
really effective, and it's not. So I don't know. One of the theories I have, you think about the pitchers that are really good at throwing these breaking pitches. Okay, Fromber's one, and it doesn't really play out there, but we're going to see it with a couple of relievers. The knuckle curve data for Hunter Brown it's almost like the batters are aware that a heavy breaking pitch is coming. And you could argue that that's true for the slider data from last year, but the sample size is really small there, so I don't really want to go that. But like every one of Hunter Brown's pitches, it's almost like the batters are aware that it's a heavy break pitch or a heavy non-break pitch, and I don't know what else to do with that other than like somehow Hunter Brown or Yiner Diaz or Victor Caratini. I'd have to go remember who Hunter Brown has pitched to, but somehow we're tipping off pitches. I think we're tipping off the pitches that have a lot of break. That's just my theory. And it's been my theory for about 2 weeks based on the X-Woba numbers I first called up.
I think Jeff Bagwell even said that on the broadcast that you can pick up on what a catcher's doing behind the plate and
Right.
get a little bit out. I guess get a little bit of a cheat in to help yourself. So really, we're just going to be concerned and hoping things improve for Hunter Brown. And so let's move on to JP France as well. How did we characterize him, Larry? A
This
guy
is
with
this is like
some
the
B
opposite.
level.
Yeah, this is the opposite end of the Hunter Brown story, right? Everything is like, wow, everything's better. And JP France, I think one of the things we said about JP France when he first came up is like he doesn't have A stuff on any of these pitches. It
No.
may be B level stuff, but notice his pitch allocation. I think this is one of the stories for JP France. Like he pitched 43% fastballs last year, And now he's just basically got like a changeup at 22, a curveball at 19, a cutter at 26, and a four seam at 30. There's a lot of mix up there. Like the
Mhm.
batters even know like the batters are probably it almost looks like the batters are guessing what's coming. Now, I maybe this is me and I might show my own biases here. I don't really believe that JP France has a lights out curveball, right? So the whole narrative I just gave you about like the guys that have these great breaking pitches, I don't think it applies to JP France, but that may be unfair because JP France has got a really effective one right now. That 157 is amazing. But what's wild about the JP France data here, guys, is that you look at like the changeup data. He's the 375 Woba. He should be better than that. He's pitching that pitch more, and that's the one pitch that's not as good as last year, but he's pitching it more, and it's still pretty effective as far as the X Woba. The
Yeah.
curveball, he's almost 50% more curveballs than last year, and it's phenomenal at 218. But that's not even close to how good it really is. The contact reflects it. So he really should be even getting better results on the curveball. The cutter is another pitch that he's pitching more of, but it's just like that's probably the one pitch that's getting abused here. The four seam fastball got abused a lot last year, but it should have been abused more, and is being abused a lot this year, but more than it should. And the quality, I mean, so the actual results are 427 versus 382. Well, that's terrible. But the expected results are it's 50 points better than it was last year. So and he's cut the number of four seamers down. So in other words, this pitch that it was really bad last year, 418. And this is another thing where you're like, well, Larry, I don't believe teams look at this ex woba data. Well, I think this is another place where you can look at it. Like they looked at the data and said 418 with the pitcher we're throwing 43% of the time, which AB France is ridiculous. Let's cut down the number of four seam fastballs. And even if it means the cutter gets hit more, it's not getting hit at a rate that's 418, right? It's getting hit at 355. I'll take 355 over 418 any day. I'll take a 301 over 418 any day. So what they're doing is you're spreading out the risk. And I think what's happening is that you may get two pitches that are plus pitches, like the changeup and the curveball, and two pitches that are mediocrely below average. But like these are all like interesting phenomena that are happening. The sweeper data guys don't pay attention to. It's not enough of a sample size this year. Last year, it's another pitch he may work in. So it'll be interesting if he picks up on a sweeper as we go along. But guys, this is JP France data is really interesting here, and it kind of like, huh, something's happening with that curveball that's really been extremely effective. I would expect to see more curveballs based on the data I'm seeing here. And if the Astros were looking at this data, that's probably what they would instruct. Like, can we go more curveballs, get away a little, less cutters, less four seams, more curves, more changeups. That's the kind of way to look at this data. But it's a really interesting story for JP France.
Yep, he's pretty balanced. Got a lot to choose from. So seeing this data shift and everything working more toward those strengths is great. And so we'll go to obviously the highlight of I
Yeah.
guess the rotation so far this year. Ronald Blanco's been phenomenal, and the data is going to show that. But I think what's also interesting is what it's expected to happen, and we might be expecting to see even more out of Blanco. But I think really, guys, the thing right off the bat is the changeup. Similar to Javier, just we're going to use it, we're going to implement it, we're going to put it in your arsenal and use it and throw it more often. But you're talking about a guy who had an over 400 WOBA expected WOBA on a four seamer last year. That's down, almost below 200 in both of those categories.
Right.
You can obviously omit curveball, and then he's reduced slider by 26% usage. And slider was a good pitch for him last year, and it looks like it could become a better pitch next year. But that changeup,
This year, yeah.
Larry, I think the changeup is just what really is the driving force behind how he's able to really get the most out of those other two pitches and really just be effective. I mean, you've seen it on the mound. He looks effective, efficient with pitch count. It's a great story for this guy. It really is.
Yeah, I mean, it almost looks like teams were just like they were trying to survive against the changeup and the slider last year, just hoping to get a four seam fastball and just abuse that fastball. Well, now
Yep.
with the changeup percentage going up to 30, they're coming to the plate and they really don't really know what's coming to them. They may be still guessing fastball or guessing slider. It's clear these X wobbles, guys. The X wobber for changeup 184, the X wobber for four seam fastball 203, X wobber for slider 146. You know what that tells me? Do not take Ronald Blanco out of the starting rotation. Like the fact that he had the no hitter. You look at this day, like, okay, well, this is what it looks like when you have a no hitter in your database. It's a small sample size. But the X-Wobble data is telling you that wasn't a fluke. It's telling you when they, even in that game where they made contact, it was terrible, weak contact. This data is telling you, like, this is a story. If you want things to be hopeful for, guys, Astros fans, dig into the Ronald Blanco story because this could be, I know the Hunter Brown story is really a challenge right now. Just dive into the Ronald Blanco story. Okay,
So
so let's switch gears
he's
and let's
special. So now we're
yeah.
gonna move on to the relievers.
All right, let's talk about the relievers for a minute. So when people this is we're going to kind of double back to like what's wrong with the Astros. All right, so here's one of the things that's wrong with the Astros is that we have three all-star level relief pitchers that none of them are pitching like all-star level relief pitchers. Are we got potentially like, well, I won't call them Hall of Famers, but Josh Hader, guys, is one of the best relievers of the last 5 years of baseball, and he's not pitching like it. All right, so here we got Brian Abreu, four seamer up and sliders down a little bit. But look at this data, guys. Like it's almost like it's a different pitcher pitching. Now, maybe with the slider, you can make the argument that it's a sample size issue. Well, I hope so, but it's still, we included the pitch numbers here so you guys can see them. It's 83 pitches. That's not like an insignificant sample size here. And as bad as the 335 is being below, slightly worse than average, 319 average again. 438 is terrible. Yeah, and so like what's happening there? And his four seam fastball last year, 277. Brandon Abreu's got a great fastball, and it's being hit at 368 level. So again, this is one of those situations. I'm just like, do they know when the slider's coming versus the fastball's coming, and they're just sitting on fastball and just abusing the fastball when it comes, and they know if a slider's coming and if it's hanging that they're going to get it? These are the questions that I'm like. Ryan Abreu's got a great slider, and it's sure not acting like a great slider this year.
No.
That's what that
No.
data says to me.
So you want
All
to do
right.
Presley or you want to go to Hader? You want to go in order 7, 8, 9 or
Yeah, let's go 7, 8, 9 because the Presley story is really challenging too, right? So,
yeah.
all right, so let's not worry about the changeups. Okay, so we're talking about 40, 32, and 54. So these numbers are getting small in the sample size. So I'm going to hope they evaporate with more pitches. But what's happening here is you see a curveball that is known to be a good curve. I mean, this is a above average curveball, and it is
Mhm.
being hit like one of the easiest curveballs in baseball to hit. And I don't know why. It's not like he's using a lot more curveballs than before. There's no real reason for it. And the four seam fastball is getting totally destroyed when again it was a plus pitch. These are like B plus, B plus, A minus pitches, right? B plus curveball, B plus four seam fastball, A minus slider, and The slider looks in the realm of what it should be. But the four seam fastball and the curveball are just getting destroyed at levels that don't make sense. And I don't know what to all I can say is it seems to me like somehow the batters know when the fastball's coming and somehow batters know when the curveball's coming. I don't know how. I don't know why. And all I'm saying is like that maybe the Astros should watch this video and okay, I'm sure they know this data, guys. I'm just kidding with that. But like something they're tipping these pitches somehow. It's my belief. It's the only answer I have.
For a guy like Presley to have his off-speed stuff getting chewed up like that, it's just, especially that curveball, is just tough. So,
Yeah.
and we're going into the bottom of the ninth, and we're gonna bring Hader up here, and he's got small data points, but it's very telling. It's just crazy to think how ineffective that sinker and slider have been this year compared to obviously prior years past. We're talking about a world-class reliever here.
Yeah. So the sinker data is really telling you he's just been unlucky. Okay. His sinker is better. The sinker's been basically the same or even slightly better than before, but it doesn't look that way, right? It's getting hit at a pretty significant wOBA gap, right? So what's weird about this data is it seems like they've been trying to pitch less sinkers, but maybe this data says you should be pitching a hell of a lot more of them, right? And so um, the the wild thing about you look at this data, and this is where I think the genesis of my theory started with Josh Hader. Josh Hader has had one of the greatest sliders in all of baseball.
Mm-hmm.
The 122, 131 slider pitch, 242 of them last year. No one could hit the slider. And this year, 404 ex wOBA slider. Who is Josh Hader this year? Like, whoever kidnapped Josh Hader and gave me this one, I want the one with the 121 slider. And this is where, like, something, they know the slider's coming somehow. That's like, Clint, what else could it be? How does a 122 ex wOBA pitch turn into a 404 ex wOBA pitch?
I don't I don't know, because what we're identifying really is a common trend with every one of these pitchers,
Correct.
better than average breaking pitches being so susceptible to hitters. And so I don't, you know, most hitters are sitting dead red fastball. They want that straight fastball, but these guys are being torn apart when it comes to these off-speed pitches. So, you know, especially considering Hader's delivery, like for me, like right off the bat, sinker, I just think has he been unlucky? Yes, but it's just got to get down. He's got to be more accurate, locate that pitch better. Slider, this behooves me. It's just like we are doing something wrong, whether it's behind the plate or pitching, which I don't think is the case, because there's times where that slider is gnarly, and then obviously there's times where it's shelled. So um, we're definitely going to be keeping an eye on that for sure, right, Larry? What
Yeah,
if
I
any of
mean,
that data starts to change?
right. So there's kind of a reason. This may be. We probably won't like harp on it as much as we did today, but we'll update you. This is one of the things that Clint and I really wanted to dig into today. When we talk about what's wrong with the Astros, right? So, all right. So number one, they played an insanely difficult schedule. Number two, they had a massive amount of pitching injuries. Number three, the relievers, they're getting abused on some of these pitches that doesn't make sense. Number four, the batters can't hit with runners in scoring position for some inexplicable reason. And number five is coming next.
So we'll just skip Montero. I think the biggest thing we just want folks to realize with Montero is things have been great, but it's probably not going to be that way forever.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
enjoy it while it's here.
let me do 30 seconds on Montero, and you can see this in his ERA versus his FIP data, guys, and this is
It's
also
fit. Yeah.
I focus on FIP a lot, not ERA. But look at these massive WOBA gaps, right? Like Montero is pitching. Arguably, you get to argue that the sinker's better, the four seam fastball a little better, the changeup's not better, and he's getting wildly favorable results for these pitches, and it won't sustain. We definitely need to get some help from the starting rotation into the bullpen because I don't. I mean, Rafael Montero's been as good as his other three guys, I guess, from an ERA standpoint. But I don't want Montero to be put in high leverage situations if we can possibly avoid it. So yeah, there's Montero. So there you go, guys. That's Larry the GM and Clint breaking down the pitching on, and I don't know that you'll get that too many other places. Just so.
And
All
now
right.
the sad part, I guess.
So number 5, what's wrong with the Astros is Jose Abreu, and
Yep.
so I think we talked about this quite a bit last week, so I'm not going to labor on it too much. But one of the things we said is we would probably bring up this data to let people continue to see it, because what we could see last year is there were pitches, mainly fastball related pitches, that Jose Abreu was making good solid contact on.
Yeah.
In other words, he's had good ex wobas, and his wobas weren't really reflecting that, and they were still catching up. But he had a real problem with sliders and curveballs and changeups. Changeups, the sample size was pretty small. Here's the problem this year, guys. Look at the ex wobas all the way down this table, and I would say the slur. Once you get the pitch below pitch 6, none of that is a sample size that's sufficient. The BABIP data is terrible. I mean, so you could say, well, the BABIP data is telling us Larry it's unlucky. Yeah, but the xwOBA data is telling you it's not. The xwOBA data is telling you, like, this guy's. I don't what I mean, guys, we're 76 pitches in on fastballs, and he's got an xwOBA 154. We're 43 pitches in on sinkers, and he's got an xwOBA 187. I those pitches were good last year, and he's like, his cutter's 160. Those pitches were good starting to be good at this point. Well, actually, he started out
Mhm.
good with those pitches, and it's still good all the way through May, the 2 terrible months of the season. The the fastballs were not a problem. I I'm trying to find signs that Jose Abreu is okay, and I'm not finding any. And I know the fan base just says, "Well, cut him." And like, well, I don't know what you do with a 39-year-old. I mean, a 37-year-old
37.
that you owe $39 million to. So you know, I know that they got to figure. I think the best thing for Jose Abreu would be to hit the IL and figure it out in a rehab assignment. But I don't know that if he's not. If he doesn't think he's injured, I don't know how you do that. I mean, the data on the bottom kind of tells the overall story, right? He's got a negative 22
Yeah.
WRC plus. For those that don't like WRC plus, he's got a 256 OPS. He's got a 133 WOBA overall. Okay, so he's been slightly unlucky. He should have his X WOBA is all the way up to 160. Yeah, those. This is terrible.
Yeah.
There's several players in the major leagues right now that are off to atrocious starts. A lot of them on the older side of the scale. I just wonder if in the non steroid era. I know these players take other things to supplement. I just wonder if Jose Abreu just like hit the wall and he's done. I don't. I mean, I wrote, "Is Jose Abreu done?" And
Yeah.
basically my answer was maybe. And I that was a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, and I'm not seeing any signs that it's better. We'll keep looking for signs, guys. But Jose, and so I mean, what have the Astros done? Well, if you asked that, if you looked at the data, the starting first baseman on this team right now in the platoon split really is more John Singleton than Jose Abreu. Um,
Mhm.
And I think that's appropriate. At least John Singleton is basically near average hitter, and this offense can sustain with him batting seventh or eighth. It's actually nice to have a lefty down in that part of the lineup.
Yep.
Um, I play Jose Abreu against some lefties you can hit. I I don't know.
It just
I'm
becomes a
done.
huge challenge to
I'm done,
navigate it,
Clint.
you know? Well,
I
no,
got
it's
nothing.
just yeah, no, it's there's really nothing to say. The data's gonna say it all for us, and it's gonna be a lingering question until the front office makes a decision on what they wanna do, and I think also, I mentioned to you earlier, I think part of this is Jose Abreu needs to communicate with them and talk about this because it's glaring and it's really, you know, in the long haul, it's going to become a true detriment to this team if it hasn't already. So, and I think that's also interesting because, people are talking about how folks are down in Sugarland for tonight to talk to watch them, and so it's kind of like I don't know what's going on, but it's it's not going to get any better, especially if he doesn't turn it around. So,
Yeah, so let's talk about everybody has wanted to make a move, right? And they've
yep,
all like so old Larry the GM. Like when I get like okay, everybody is just beating the hell out of the table for one thing to happen, and like guys, are you sure? You sure you really want this? So I put out a little Twitter poll, right? And I only got 71 votes, so it's not a lot. But I'll give people time. Who would you promote for these four players, right? So who would you promote? And the answer, I believe correctly so, people said, well, I'm familiar with ex-WOBA data from my buddy Larry the GM, and that 209 ex-WOBA really worries me. So I'm going to stay away from that on player A. Player B, okay, that player A's got a 34% strikeout rate. Player B's got a 444 BABIP, which means he's probably been lucky as heck with getting hits, and so that's reflected in his WOBA gap too. He's got a 160 point plus WOBA gap. I guess this was as of 2 days ago, guys. Then I got player C. I got a much bigger sample size, and I don't have near as much of a WOBA gap. I got a really low K rate and a fairly normal BABIP. Well, that looks like a set of numbers I can at least project forward into the major leagues with. Player D, he's got that huge BABIP again, and he's got the 30% strikeout rate, and okay, his WOBA gap's not very bad. So looking at player D, I'm just really kind of worried about that BABIP and being repeatable and the K rate, and probably not him either. So most people, rightly so, when they did this analysis, they answered D. And here's the problem. Go to the next slide, Clint. I'm saying most people answer player C. Player C, guys. Player C is Singleton from last year. That's Singleton, and everybody is like, we need to get somebody else up here and get rid of Singleton. No, Singleton's actually performing like an average major league player, and the guy everybody's screaming for is Loperfido, the guy that had a 209 ex-WOBA 2 days ago. They're like Loperfido has done a really good job of hitting home runs and a really good job of striking out. Until we start seeing a better mix that like draws some more walks, hit some singles, hit some doubles, make some contact that we maybe believe is repeatable in the major leagues, then we'll bring you up. The other two guys are Cabbage last year and Cabbage this year. The thing that's important about Cabbage last year, and I tweeted about this, Cabbage had arguably the second best stats of these four last year. That's player D. He came up and he was atrocious for the Angels, and they basically, like, okay, well, maybe he's a 4A player. Well, Cabbage is doing really good things this year in AAA and doing some time sharing with Loperfido and others in AAA. So Guys, to me, the fact that we have John Singleton here basically means there shouldn't be any reason to rush of any of these other options, right? There's no crisis. There's no crisis with Singleton. There's a crisis with Abreu. But the Abreu crisis is complicated because of the finances of it, right? So I don't know if Jim Crane's going to be willing to write off $39 million, and if he's not, how little playing time can we give a player that's playing? We're paying $19.5 million for. Well, you can say, well, we're trying to win the World Series, Larry, and I agree with you. But what's the answer? Well, my answer is we got Singleton. If you guys told me of all these four players, we got the right one here. So my answer is just play Singleton more and see what happens. Now, I get you that Singleton is what is Singleton? 32, 33? I don't even remember. He's not on the upswing of his career. He's definitely on the part of the career that normally his skills would be diminishing. But there's no until Loperfido can put together a statistical package that delivers an xwOBA greater than 209. I'm not in any immediate crisis to get Loperfido here, and that's my stake on it. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, it makes sense. I think obviously the playing time at the major league level is the big thing. We need to probably see Singleton more, Abreu less. That's the definitive, easy, rational decision to make. And the only thing I'm gonna say about Loperfido is just guys keep in mind where these guys are drafted, where they ranked as prospects coming up, and do not be wowed by all the home runs you see on the Twitter feed. I mean, baseball is played at a much more in-depth level, so is it great to see that type of power from him? Yes, but consistency and the ability to show up when it matters is key, and that we haven't seen that from Loperfido yet. So it's a fun poll. It's always fun to see what's going on with fans, right?
Well, and people probably get sick of me setting them up for these polls. There's some people like Larry. I know there's a false narrative in here. I just don't know where it is. I don't know what you're doing, but I know they know me well enough to know I'm tricking them. And guys, I'm just trying to get you to understand. Everything you see doesn't necessarily it everything isn't always as it appears, and
Yeah.
that's basically the point. I'm quickly trying to get to the Loperfido um, current WOBA and xWOBA. Give me 10 more seconds. 9, 8, 7. Oh, no, no. All right, 10, 9. All right, Loperfido currently xWOBA 211. WOBA 488. So it hadn't changed significantly in 2 days. So Loperfido, get the xWOBA up to 300. Figure out what you need to do. And that's what I say. I mean he's drawing 12.8% walks. It's just a strikeout, Larry. Get the strikeouts down. And you know that's really what I would count to.
So with that, Larry, we obviously leave this open for any questions, comments, anything like that. I have not gotten a single comment to this video, so either folks really loved it and we really explained everything perfectly, or they've done something else and they just forgot to turn it off at this point.
Or
Close the window.
we wore them out with statistical analysis. Oh my God, these two guys, they're too much for me. It could be all the above.
Yeah, but I mean, like I said, I think it was a great show. I think there's a lot of data, obviously, but that's how these shows go, and I hope everybody can appreciate that. I know sometimes we get a little long-winded. It's an hour and 15 minutes. I think we improved a little bit on last time, so we'll get better. But guys, obviously, if you're here with us right now, like the video, subscribe to the channels, find us on the socials. Go to LarryTheGM.com, follow us, tweet us, ask us questions. Give us all the feedback you can. Share it with your friends. Subscribe to the website. All those great things that that we are hoping that we can get y'all to do by putting this content out. And Larry, that's really all I've got, and I'll leave
Yeah.
the floor for you.
Yeah, those was I mean, guys, one of the things that Clinton and I really wanted to do today is we really wanted to break down and try. I mean, because the question came from Clint's brother, and we know he's representative of probably a million Astros fans. What's wrong with the Astros, right? And everybody wants it to be one thing, and we could just magically fix this one thing. And what Clint and I are telling you is about five things, and one of those gets better tomorrow. The schedule gets better. The pitching gets
Mhm.
better, right? A couple of these things are going to get better. The runners in scoring position will get better. I'm not sure Jose Abreu is going to get better, and I'm not sure until we figure out what's happening with these, like the ability of certain a bunch of batters to hit the breaking pitches. I'm not sure that gets better, unless maybe it's just like we just play teams that can really hit the breaking pitch really well. And quite honestly, that's kind of what the Larry to GM moneymaker table. I mean, guys, I talked to my wife. I said, you know what, I really probably should go back and like make a table of all the moneymaker matchups, and people would have realized that the Astros were negative in the moneymaker starting pitching matchup day after day after day after day after day after day in this season.
Oh, I think Larry got frozen up right there.
Like,
I was like
it's
mid
surprise
thought.
to me that they've lost. I think I'm gone. Well, I think I froze up. Am I back? Are you back,
Yes,
Clint?
you're
Am I
back.
back?
Sorry, you stopped for just a second. I
I know
interjected,
you.
but yeah.
Okay. Yeah, the hotel. Who knows what the hotel Wi-Fi can
Eh,
do? But all right, guys,
So
let's just
we
close
did
it
get a
there. Thank.
comment,
Thank.
Larry.
Okay.
Um, Brand Brandon Colorado is asking, what about Brandon Belt?
Okay. So I think he makes sense, but the question is, what do you? I mean, ultimately, it all starts with what is this franchise? What is Jim Crane willing to do with Jose Abreu? And the thing about Brandon Belt is he's left-handed, and like, okay, if we're going to sign Brandon Belt for 1 year, okay, fine. But Brandon Belt, like, I'm just looking at his Fangraphs page. His Fangraphs projection is a WRC plus of 102, right? I know he was better than that last year, but like that's not much better than what we're getting from John Singleton today, right? So the question would be, well, why do I need a Brandon Belt when I'm getting that from John Singleton? And I know people say, well, I don't believe, I don't know. I guess people don't believe my numbers really. I mean, I'm not making them up. You know, John Singleton's got a 95 WRC plus right now, and he's projected to give us 97 for the rest of the year. So, like, Brandon Belt makes
I,
probably more sense, but he's a little bit older than Singleton. So, you know what I'm tired of? I'm tired of the 35-year-old plus third baseman.
yeah, I think for Singleton, it's just a matter of let's get him out there more. Let's give him more chances, and we'll really start to find out real quick where he stands and what he can
Right,
do.
either he'll sink or swim, and by the time
Yeah,
we decided he's sunk, then Loper Fido's probably got enough plate appearances, or Cabbage has got enough plate appearances, and
yeah,
you're turning to them because either one of those. Cabbage is left-handed too, right? So either one of those.
yes.
So like we basically have three left-handed first baseman options, or that. Yeah, why do I I understand the question about Belt, and I think that question made more sense like in February, if I really thought Jose Abreu was going to suck this year, but none of the predictions said he was going to suck this year. So I Jose Abreu. I'm tired of 37-year-old first baseman. I'll just leave it at that. I'm tired of 36-year-old position players, and I'd be fine that I didn't have to deal with. I mean, Jose Altuve will be the one position player that I'm welcome to let play when he's 37 years old. But until then, I don't really want any more position players who are 36, 37 years old.
So I've got another question. Coming back, Brandon's asking, what is going on with Chas McCormick? It's a good question. I hadn't really thought about too much about Chaz, but I'm sure Larry has at some point. I think I got Larry frozen again just for a second. But it's interesting, but I'm also one of those folks that, well, I'll side with Larry on that. It's early, so it becomes one of those situations where it's like I think he'll work out of it. He's always been one of those guys that's a little bit better against lefties and righties, and so I'll just be looking and hoping for things to turn up. And guys, I just don't want to discredit the fact that they've played a lot of baseball in a short amount of time with very little rest and very little off time. So it's tough. But that being said, I hope that kind of answers your question, Brandon. I know it's not probably the answer you wanted to, but I think you gave us something to really look at for next week and for stuff to start, getting data on and working on a better answer for you. So if I didn't answer it, give us a chance to answer it next week. So with that being said, guys, I lost Larry. It's just me now, so you have to deal with me. But thanks for coming out. I hope you enjoyed it. We're doing this weekly. If you have questions, you have insight, you have anything you want to share with us, find us on Twitter. I'm at Clint the Scout. Larry's at Larry the GM. Obviously, you have Larry's site. And anything else besides that, just reach out to us, give us a chance to talk and work our magic around any questions you have. And I look forward to seeing y'all next time.